All right, let's get started. So, going just took my shelf exam for OMT. Wanted to put down some notes. Wasn't doing so hot on the shelf prep questions before the exam on counterstrain. Went to Dirty Medicine, watched it, you know, compared it to my notes to add a few things here and there. I came up with some slightly different mnemonics that worked for me. I'm going to write them down here for posterity and hopefully they'll help someone else too. Let's get started. So there's anterior cervical, right? So there's your jaw, the angle of your jaw. There's one there, so let's call that one, right? And then bilaterally, there's two, three, four, five, six, seven, and the seventh one is interesting. I think it's a little bit, let's say there's the clavicle. Seventh is kind of right there where the SCM connects on the top of the clavicle. Then you kind of have your xiphoid. Oops. Then you have your xiphoid. And right there, right in there, I suppose, is the eighth, right? So they're called anywhere from AC1, AC2 to AC7 to AC8, right? So the easiest way that I found it to remember was everything, and then posteriorly you have this 7 points too. They're slightly more complicated because there's like one medially and there's one that's more laterally. So they're like two ones, and then they go down 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all that back of the head. But anyway, so anterior cervical, right? We got to worry about those, and we got to worry about posterior cervical points and treatment. So just by and large, it's going to be F meaning flex, side bend away, rotate away. So F Sarah. By and large, it's going to be F Sarah anteriorly. The only thing that's going to be different is the thing that's on the angle of the mandible, right? This thing is going to be different. So, well, which makes sense. It's on the angle of the mandible. So here we go, or the ramus of the mandible. And that would become 1. So that's the first one. And that would become RA, rotate away. So I just think of it as, slap away. So the easiest way I think of it is slap away, right? The part you're treating, you just kind of slap it away. So you rotate away, which kind of goes with F Sarah, and, being slapped away worked for me. The next is 7. So I kind of think like, oh, and this kind of ties into something else, which is I think of it as a 7-Up straw, which I got from Dirty Men. So I think, okay, I got my 7-Up straw, and that'll make more sense in a minute. I got my 7-Up straw going down, right? Straw. So for seventh, it is STRA, and the W is silent. So straw. So F Sarah for almost all the other points anteriorly for all the other points, right? And then 7 straw and 1 slap away. So you're just 1 slap away here. I'm just going to remove that so that it's more. So you're 1 slap away from drinking out of a straw. All right, so F Sarah for everything else. For 1, it's slap away, and for 7, it's straw. And they'll tie into something else really soon. Um, and let's do posterior cervical. Posterior cervical is, again, so it's in the back, so most of it is extension. So E Sarah, and then it has some maverick points, which means they don't do so well extending. For some reason, they got to go the other way. And I'm sure we could explain logically, mechanistically the reason, but for now, just they don't extend. So again, it's the midline point. There's 2 points. Like I said, there's a 1 point more midline and 1 is more lateral. So whatever the midline is, so again, the 1 is the problem. The midline one is going to be different, and that's just going to be flex. So it doesn't want to extend, it just wants to flex. Okay. And the next one, which I actually got the idea from Dirty Medicine, is 3. The number 3 is not E. So basically the number 3 also doesn't like being extended. So for number 3, for the third one, it's going to be flex Sarah. It's still Sarah, but again, it's flex Sarah. And for 1 midline, it's just flex. So for anterior cervical, I remember one slap away, 7 straw, and F Sarah. And for posterior cervical, again, it's 1, I don't know what M stands for, midline. I mean, like you can call it male or whatever works, 1 medial F, and that 3 is not E, so that's means it's actually F Sarah, and then everything else is E Sarah because you're in the back, so extending will shorten the muscles more, which is what you want in counterstrain, shortening of the muscles. So hopefully that's good. All right, so really the only thing I think I didn't say anything cleverly different from what I saw on Dirty Medicine other than slap away and promising that this straw is gonna drawing the straw this way is gonna make a lot of sense and tie into other things in a minute. That was my promise. So let's get into that. So the reason the straw works is the straw goes down, and once it reaches your xiphoid process down here, it starts again. So for when you're doing anterior thoracic spine, anterior thoracic tender points, it's actually all just flex. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, it's all just flex until you get to the 7th one, which is, if you remember, they're in 2 places. So this is all 7, 7, 7. This is 8, 8, 8. It's 9, 9, 9. Without getting into that nightmare, point is for 7, starting from 7, basically the straw dips down, you got your esophagus, you've crossed it, and you got to do the same thing again. So from 7 to 12, it's actually straw again. So I really like that connection between anterior cervical and anterior thoracic, that the 7 straw dips down to anterior thoracic, and the treatment is again 7 straw, and again 1, 2, 6 is simply just flexion, right? And obviously it's F straw, it's flexion because you're in the front. It's not just straw, but the key point to remember is that, I feel, because obviously front is flexion and back is mostly extension. So similarly, let's finish up posterior thoracics. So in posterior thoracics, I'm going to draw the diagram a little bit on the side. You got your how to say this, 1 to 12, and you're going all the way. And mostly, the thing is, there's the center, right? There's your, how to say this, paraspinal, and then there's your spine. So your spine is central, and then around the spine there are points. So there's 3 points, right? One that's right on the double points on the transverse process is on the left and right, and the spinous process in the center. So this is the spinous process in the center and transverse process. So it's like, oh my god, I have to do this again. So this line, I think of it like a BART line, right? Because railways run in parallel or clustered, right? Like they're 2 tracks. So the way to think of that is, so 1 to 12 for the paraspinal or for the transverse processes is BART, right? BART. So that reminds me, just switches because there's no B, it's SART. that's how I do it. Like, and that actually again goes with another thing where you will see clusters, and the treatment will again luckily be BART, aka SART. So BART B is not really a treatment position. Side bend away, rotate towards the position, but the BART helps you remember SART, or we just switch one letter. So right, all these points we got for free for SART, right? We're done. And if you're wondering, yes, of course, it's extent, right? So there you go. Those are the transverse processes. As for the spinous processes, dead center 1 to 12, right? That just goes back to, I think, it should just go back to Sarah, right? No craziness there, because Sarah, if you don't know anything else, it's probably Sarah. So we're just going to extend Sarah because it's in the back, so we do extension. So once again, we have your thoracic spine anteriorly, which is mostly just flex, other than the straw that drop down from number 7 cervical down to start again at the xiphoid 7 to again be the straw treatment. And then you have posterior thoracic, which is extended, obviously. Uh, and Sarah, because it's midline Sarah, and Sarah takes BART, right, which is just SART, and the SART is 2 tracks. So the SART is talking about this treatment, and the Sarah is talking about this treatment. And then they're both extended. Another way to think of it is BART. Oops, the mnemonic that I was using is BART dumps Sarah midline, right? Kind of like when Sarah gets off, she gets in the middle of the line, gets off in the middle of the line, or whatever have you. That should do it. All right, now moving on. So we did cervical anterior posterior, we did thoracic anterior posterior. Let's just do ribs because they're right there. So for ribs, the mnemonic I came up with is, and again, mostly inspired by dirty medicine, is start ribbing, start ribbing, F, start ribbing, and let me see, Sarah, Bart. Oh yeah, that was really different. Start ribbing, F Bart, you're not, and then E Bart, E F Bart, Sarah, Sarah, Bart, Sarah, right. So there we go. So what happens there is interesting. So these are the anterior, very simple. Basically, all the ribs in the anterior ribs are 1, 2, whatever, are all STRT. So start. So you start with the ribs in the front. So done. You're finished. So it's 1 to 12, whatever you have, right? And in case you're wondering, it's flexion. And ribs are interesting, even in the back, even in the posterior. I'm going to talk about ribs 2 to 12. They are still flexion, only they're Sarah, right? So we're done with that. So the weird one is the first posterior rib. That's the weird one. It's extended and it's SART, S-A-R-T, which threw me off a lot of times. So, I'm just gonna keep it simple and let's see, how do I do this? Yeah, that's one thing to memorize. So I was just like, start ribbing, take the BART, and F Sarah. Start ribbing and good fun. E BART, take the BART, extended line BART. I think I had one for this. Oh yeah. Okay, so the thing was Sarah takes extended BART. Yeah, which applies here too, right? So you could think of Sarah taking extending BART for the posterior thoracics, and you can also think it for the ribs, where your Sarah is taking an extended BART line, right? The only real difference is from posterior thoracic is you got flexion because you got to start ribbing in the front. So that there's some overlap there. Just like posterior thoracic had Sarah and SART, posterior ribs have Sarah and BART slash SART, however you want to think about it. And yeah, so start ribbing, take the BART, extended line BART, extended line BART over there too, and then F Sarah. So really this is the one that stands out, and with the BART you can remember it because thoracics had a BART for the tram tracks, and then you start the BART at the first line. So for ribs, it's again the BART or the SART, since that's how I rhyme it, extended line BART. And you're done with the ribs. So we're done with anterior thoracics, posterior thoracics, anterior cervicals, posterior cervicals, anterior ribs, posterior ribs. And that is a lot of points. Now I'm going to do the last few things that confused me. And let me see if I can find them. Yeah, okay, so they're a bit overlapping. So once you get in the hip area, right, there's your SI joint. Once you get in the hip area, it gets a little confusing because you've got your iliopsoas muscle going there, you got iliacus muscle going down, you got a bunch of other things. But long story short, here's how I memorize it. So I just say you know, on this, there are points like, let me just copy that for my sake. Copy this twice. Copy, this is anterior. So let's do two that are very confusing and very similar in the same area. So one is, you know, oh, you know, start here and you're 2/3 of the way. The other is, that's, you know, ASIS. And then you start here and you start here, sorry, midline. Oops. How do I read that? Whatever, you get it. This was not midline, but I should have mentioned this, but you get the point. So long story short, your points are ASIS, AIIS, and then it goes from there. So let's just talk about it. Um, one of them that I like is, let me just take it simple, is the lightning one. So here's the ASIS. Here's the, I'm gonna draw it actually as a square. So let's say the AISIS is square, and then AIIS is below it, right? So medial to it is a point, then medial to this is a point, then medial to this is a point, then right under it is a point, then you go to the pubic symphysis. So if I had to draw your hip, that's your hip, right? And in the front, this is anterior. So anterior Chapman points. There's two of them that gets confusing. So anyway, you see the lightning sign. So on the other side again, you would have, you know, the medial to ASIS, medial to AIIS, then lateral to AIIS, then right below AIIS inferior, and then going right there to touch the pubic symphysis, right? And these are your, and there would be some point in the middle, one, two, yeah, right there. So there you go. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think they're called anterior lumbar. 3, 4, 5. So a anterior lumbar 1 to anterior lumbar 5. Anyway, let's just get into their so remember the BART, whenever two tracks are clumped together, we're the BART. So these three are kind of clumped together. So their treatment is basically BART, which translates to SART. So there you go. And then since you're in the front, you'll flex. So flexion SART. Three things done. You're done. Those are the treatments. Remember the straw? The straw. So you know, if you're taking a straw down from the spine, from the 7 AC7, right? AC7. If you start taking 7-up straw down and you end up in the thoracics, right? And there again, you have the straw in the thoracics from 7 to 12, and you keep going down. That was a straw treatment. Now you're you're at lumbar 1, right? So that was thoracic 7. So so now you're at lumbar 1. That's where kind of the straw ends, right there. So this treatment is actually the straw treatment. Straw treatment. And then there's a clump, so that's the BART line, SART line treatment. Finished, right? So there's only really one remaining, and when we don't know anything else, we pick Sarah. So there you go. Straw, because that dropped down from the top to bottom, right? Down to L1. BART, because these 3 points were clumped together. And then Sarah, because that's like, if there's nothing else left, Sarah it is. So you're done with the anterior lumbar points. Now there are other points which I was talking about here, you know, kind of like middle of something, like midline ASIS or greater trochanteric ASIS. Like, so without going into the anatomy, if they were to flow, they would flow like this. This I find disturbing because you got lumbar 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then now you got these. So I don't know how to reconcile them, but these points I'm talking about are for, like I said, for muscles like iliopsoas muscles or iliacus muscles. They aren't necessarily tender points for L1, L2, L3, 4, 5. So those would be, you know, they kind of flow like this. Here is a muscle that would be kind of iliacus, yeah, iliacus, and then here would be the psoas tender point, kind of like, you know, 2/3 of the way, and then halfway from here to here, all those rules. But as long as you know that, and then there's one here, and then there's like kind of drop down there. So I like to think of it as marble rolling down. Okay, so there's 2/3 of the way, halfway, then kind of right before pubic symphysis, lateral to it, or on the pubic symphysis and down, kind of just kind of like a marble rolling down into its down the hill. That's how I think about it. Not very different from the lightning sign, just more smooth and helps me remember. Whatever helps you remember the anatomy. So again, let's just do that. Here's the marble rolling down, and then kind of falls down, pops in. So here we go. Rolling down, pops in, right? Pops into this last one. So for these two, what's the treatment? So for what I came at is fast frog, flexed, fast frog flexed, father frog. I know it's not great, but it works. So fast is just FST, flex, side bend towards. So for this psoas muscle, you would flex and side bend towards, and you're done. And for frog, what does frog mean? Frog means the Faber treatment, which looks like frog legs. You're sitting frog legs. So if you're flexed, abducted, and externally rotated, you're basically sitting on the ground with crossed legs. That's what it is. So frog is just Faber treatment, right? And so the frog is twice. So down here is also the Faber treatment. That's the treatment done. Flexed. So basically you just have to use flexion. If you're down there and you're hurting lateral to your, I don't know if it's pectineus or what muscle it is, but if you're hurting lateral to your pubic symphysis, that's what it is. And if you're right on your pubic, it's father. And that's mispronounced. Father. Luke, I'm your father, right? So it's actually, these are flex, adducted, internally rotated. Luke, I'm your father, not fad, er, father. So if that works for you. So fast, flex, side bend towards. Faber, that's the frog position. Flexed, abducted, er, like you're sitting cross-legged. F, fast frog flex, that's third one is simply flexed. Fifth one is father, F-A-D-I-R, father. Luke, I'm your father. And then frog again, Faber. And that's the front treatments. Now the last one in the back is one I'm particularly proud of. So I'm gonna, here's your SI joint, and it's not your SI joint. This is the midline of your SI joint, either your 4, 5, you know, it's fused. Anyway, okay, so you got your PSIS, you got your PSIS on the left, you got your PSIS on the right. So this is important remembering because they mess with you on this one. So you got one medial to PSIS, and that's called upper pole L5. You got to remember these in pairs, it helps. Then you got something below PIS, and that's called a little bit, since it's below, it's not as medial, lower pole L5. They're both L5s, but they're upper pole and lower pole. Okay, so now that we're done with that, we'll come back to that. And then you got your ILA, so that's just down there, all right? And then you got your L3 out there somewhere. You got L4, and they're on tensor fascia lata insertion. There's a tensor fascia lata insertion here, and there's a tensor fascia lata, like the body of the tendon or the muscle is down here. So these 3 and 4 have to do with tensor fascia lata. They're on it. So again, opposite to that, 3 and 4. So this is upper 5, this is lower 5, upper 5, lower 5, right? So you got 2 for 5s, I mean 4 for 5s, but you got on one side, speaking one side, you got a pair of 5s, you got a pair of 5s, you know, one medial to PSIS, one below PSIS, and then you got 3 and 4. And we already did this, which is the ILA thing right there, down there. Then somewhere, you know, out there between your sacrum and your greater trochanter of your leg will be your sciatic that's going to end up hurting, right? So I'm not going to draw all that. So just get the idea. Sciatic is somewhere, pain right there, your sciatic belly of your sciatic is hurting. Sciatic. sciatic pain. Okay, so now I'm gonna do one more, and that's, oh yeah, I forgot to name it. Just like these were pairs, 5, right? This is also paired with something. Let me show you. It's called high ilium uh, flare out. High ilium flare out. High ilium flare out. And it's paired with something a little bit over here. It's again on the PSIS, but like to the side of the PIS. And that's high ilium sacroiliac. High ilium sacroiliac. I don't know. Don't ask me. But it's around PSIS, right? So now I want to draw something for you. I want to draw some patterns, right? So there's the hypho and high psi, hypho and high psi. Those are pairs. So once you're comfortable with this, which takes some getting used to, now you can really, now you're like, oh man, now the treatments are pain. Yes, treatments are actually simple. I broke them down like this. If you're close to the midline, all of these close to the midline, these 3 points will adduct. Their treatment must include an adduction. They're closer to the midline. End of story. All of these points away from the midline, all of these 4 points away from the midline must abduct. They must have abduction in the treatment. So if you have multiple choice, you just go at it. You drop all, if you know it's one of the 3 medial points, you drop all the answer choices that have abduction. That just can't be right. So this is a really good way to answer these questions fast. So I've already, if you've got answer choices, you've already eliminated stuff based on whether there should be adduction or abduction. All right, now everything is extension. Now that we've done that, everything is extension other than these points. These points are flexion. Other than these 2 points, everything is flexion, right? Flexion, flexion here, flexion here. Everything else is extension. So these would be extended and abducted. Done, right? And don't worry about internal rotation and external rotation. Anything that's abducted is generally goes with ER. Anything that's adducted, it generally goes with IR. So you get this for free. As long as you know abduction and adduction, you get ER and IR for free, right? So abduction is outwards, external rotation is outwards, adduction is inwards, internal rotation is inwards. That's free. You've got everything you need to solve this right here. So like if I ask myself, hey, what's this? Oh, it's outside. It should be abducted. If it's abducted, it should be externally rotated, and it's not one of the 2 flexion points, so it should be extended. Done. So like that, now you have a map and you can solve everything. I can solve everything. And that's pretty much it. Let me see if I forgot something. Oh yeah, I'll draw the Big Dipper for y'all, since that sometimes helps. So you're sitting there and you're like, oh man, I can't do this crap. It's too much to draw all this, think about all this. Here's the easier way to draw it. Get rid of all the crazy lines and labels. Just keep it simple. So the easiest way to draw this is basically, there's a triangle. So you draw yourself a little triangle. Just know that it's around the PSIS. Label the PSIS. I feel like that really helps. So just label the PSIS, and then this triangle kind of, you can draw that, okay? I mean, I didn't close the triangle, but you get the idea. There's that, and then there's the Big Dipper. Watch this. Kind of like the spoon of the Big Dipper. So that's how I remember it. They're the spoons of the Big Dipper, right? Not the spoons, the scoops of the Big Dipper, and then there's this internal triangle. The internal triangle is all about adduction. The scoop of the Big Dipper is all about abduction, away, abduction. And then the only 2 flex points are take one from this and one from this. Join them, and there are your flex points, and you are done. That's literally it. Sometimes it helps, like sometimes HISI, this is not tested as much, this thing. So some people can choose to draw their Big Dipper like so. And they can just ignore this, and now they've immediately know what's flexed, because now you've even connected the flex point to your abduction. But I'm not a big fan of that, so whatever. Yeah, so once again, for the back, you got the triangle, and you got the Big Dipper, and these 2 are flexed, adducted, abducted. everything here is adducted, everything on this side is abducted. Again, you got your triangle, you got your big dipper, and then you connect the midpoint to this, and these are the flex points. This stuff is adducted, this stuff is abducted, and you're finished. All right, well, that was hopefully good enough for everyone. What else do I need to tell you? Yeah, I'm sure there are other things that I missed out on, but this, I could answer 70% of the questions very quickly with this. And again, just always know that your PSIS is here, right? This is medial, this is inferior, and this is kind of like a superior lateral. So just knowing that your PSIS is here, because you could watch this video and then you get confused in the question because they're giving everything based on where the ILA is, right? Where the ILA is and where the PSIS is. So this will then let you say, okay, I know which point they're talking about out of all the points I drew, and then you'll know your treatment. All right, good luck to you and me both.